Hey, it's Mark. I'm appearing on the timeline, and I am here at the Career Thought Leaders Conference. And there's a bunch of us here, the career practitioners, and we're trying to find out what's best for our practices. Although, you know me, I'm not a practitioner per se, but I do like the information, all that's intel for me and all that's intel for you as far as I'm concerned. In the meantime, I'm going to be talking throughout the day to different colleagues, and I want to introduce you to Chris Mcwicket. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about you and about what you do. I think you also have a new book that you just published.
I do, yes, thank you. So, Mark, I own Professional Courage, which is based out of Cleveland, Ohio, and we work with both individual as well as corporate clients. On the individual side, help them with their career branding materials, job search strategy, interview prep. And then on the corporate side, we actually come into organizations and help them build a coaching culture and support intentional career pathing within the organization. So people who don't feel connected or aren't sure how to move forward in their organization and then potentially look outside, we help them make sure that they're happy within the organization.
Now, has that surged upwards since the pandemic?
It sure has, yes. So while the pandemic slowed things a bit from our presentation and live trainings, certainly as the Great Resignation came forward in 2022, we see a lot of companies finally prioritizing career growth of their employees and making that investment in their values and what they're looking to get out of the organization and out of their careers.
Now, they're trying to control the narrative as far as we want to keep you here. This is a nice place. See what we're doing for you. Or are they really trying to give some current how to move about in the organization? Maybe if they want to move to the outside, they can.
Sure. I find there's a bit of a split, but quite frankly, we focus a lot on high growth, like high employee growth companies. So companies that within the last 3-4 years have moved from 50 to 250 employees. So they're just exploding. So they know they're creating a great culture that people want to be in and kind of get infused in all of that, but they're not entirely sure how to create that culture the right way. Maybe they have a mentor program that's kind of pieced together because someone knew that mentors were important versus kind of setting up the managers and leaders of the organization to really understand how to provide career coaching and career development opportunities for their employees, for their subordinates, for team members across the organization. So in those cases, I think that they truly do have a desire to create the right culture and make their employees happy and feel valued. They're just not entirely sure how to do it.
So how can a job seeker find a company like that these days?
Sure. So I think you can tell a lot about the culture of an organization by checking out even their website. Certainly we have like PayScale and Glassdoor and some of those back end sources that give you information about the company and what some of the employees, although I think you find a lot of disgruntled employees post more often than those who are happy.
Yeah.
But I think, checking out the company's website and really getting a feel for how they talk about the organization. If you go onto a hospital website and they have 1,000 awards posted, then obviously external accolades are very important to them. If you go onto an organization's website and they're really promoting and talking about their mission and the value and the impact they make in the community, then you get a different sense for culture that way. So I think checking out, not only obviously talking with employees who currently or have worked with the organization, but taking a look at how they represent themselves online, right? Even LinkedIn, what are they posting out there? What are they putting out? It says a lot about what they prioritize.
Well, yes, it does. And I think, though, these days when Glassdoor, and there were a few sites that actually had reviews, now really any social network has a review of a company and has, pretty much what people are going to accept the truth because companies have pushed employees or pushed job seekers, depending on how you look at it, to the brink, to the point to where they want to do that. And they're doing it as a last resort. They're not doing it as a first resort because, of course, people want to keep their jobs.
Of course.
But how are companies beginning to respond to that, to what they find online that might be a little discouraging?
So I think it's just like when we take a look at, a very small business that's selling, granola bars out of their garage and they get one bad review and then all of a sudden that's changing people's impression. Or I've even seen instances, again, in the small business space where someone is getting a bad reputation online and it's not even their company. They misappropriated that review.
Right. Or they tagged the wrong company.
Right. So I think organizations that are large enough to have, PR resource to kind of work through that and figure out the right way to make sure that they're getting in touch and verifying that that was an accurate review and that was actually intended for their organization. And then being able to kind of follow up with that, whether it's in the comments or with the actual individual to kind of piece things together. But quite frankly, I think it's such a broad we're seeing so many of those reviews and so much information is coming forth, especially as you get to those mid to large size companies,
Mhm.
that it's really about the company making sure they're communicating clearly what their organization brings to the table to their candidates, as opposed to trying to battle that online.
Yeah. So there's a potpourri of different ways that people are interviewing and finding candidates.
Mhm.
Have you seen anything that might be a little creative that really impresses you that might give a true sense of what people should prepare for?
Oh, wow. I think there's so many cool things that people do to interview and some that just don't seem like they're really working out so well. I think I'm still a big fan of those kind of crisis questions, which I know sound crazy, but when we talk to job seekers and say, you could potentially be asked, you come home from work one day, you find a penguin in your freezer. What are you going to do about that?
Hmm.
And I think it causes job seekers to panic because they're assuming there is a correct answer to the question,
Right.
when really
You
the
want to see the
interviewer is
thinking.
yeah, they're trying to see what your thought process looks like. How do you identify resources to help you with a problem you don't know how to solve? So while I think those questions terrify job seekers, I'm always really fascinated by them because it tells me that the interviewer is really listening to the responses rather than asking like this, sort of barrage of questions they have listed in front of them that the HR department asks them to,
Mhm.
to ask, and then they're just scoring you from 1 to 5 or whatever it
Yeah,
may
I
be.
find that very interesting that you like that. I'm not particularly a fan because a lot of times companies don't really set themselves up to ask themselves that kind of question. Because if you had a ridiculous experience interviewing up being asked,
Mm.
then that just puts salt on the
Well,
wound.
that's certainly fair. Yes. So I do think I do think you have to be in the right, have the right standardized process for interview before you're going to
Yeah,
get into those levels of questions. But I think, tell me about a time that you helped a client, and you're sort of expecting
I
this
know
very
those
boring standard
yeah,
answer.
those kind
So
of
I think
boring
it takes
too.
behavioral interviewing to kind of a new level.
Yeah, it's the conversation for me, really, is just
Mhm.
how well can you build a conversation and get people to talk about themselves in a way that doesn't seem to be ridiculed later on.
Right.
Because people will say, these are questions I asked, and they
Right.
asked me about the duck in the freezer, and it's like,
Yes. I will also say this, Mark, that I think for job seekers is such an important thing that's overlooked is you and I both know that your brand, the way you're putting yourself out there is so important.
hmm
I think job seekers drastically underestimate how important it is the way you're looking on Zoom, right?
yeah,
What's going on behind you? Are you dressed appropriately? Are you comfortable with the camera? Do you have the right lighting in the room?
hmm
Those details, I think, have such an exponential impact on the impression you're leaving behind because they can no longer see you in person and verify your handshake or see how you behave when you're tense in a room. I
yes.
think it goes a long way to kind of show someone this person was prepared, they are invested, they care about the way they're coming across, all of those pieces. So I think we underestimate for video interviewing the background that's happening, things that are going on around us, and how we're prepared to physically just look on camera, as well as the questions that we're answering.
Well, you gave a whole mouthful today in these few little minutes. So, real quick about the book.
Yes.
You published just recently, right?
Yes. So the book is actually still set to be released to the public. We have a couple of advanced reader
Okay.
copies that have been given access to here at Career Thought Leaders.
Okay.
The book will launch on October 18th, but you can pre-order now at Barnes & Noble.
Entitled the book.
The title of the book is The Requisite Courage. It's how to make brave decisions in business and life. So it really pulls upon some authentic stories from my life,
Mhm.
and then showcases a science-based approach to fear management and how you kind of identify the direction you want to go in your life and then make that happen.
Very interesting. Very good.
Yes,
Well,
thank
thank you
you.
very much, Chris, for joining
Thank
me
you so
here.
much for having me.
And for the rest of you, you'll be watching the timeline throughout the day. I'll be checking in with someone else. And thank you. You guys have a great day. Peace in the battle of love.
Thank you very much for listening to the Voice of Job Seekers. This is Mark Anthony Dyson. Just call me Mark. I hack and reimagine the job search process so you can hack and reimagine on your own. And you have to read, view, listen to the practical tips on my blog to completely understand. Go to thevoiceofjobseekers.com to see what I'm talking about and get in on the conversation. You can also text me at 708-365-9822. You can also email me at mark@thevoiceofjobseekers if you need help. That's mark@thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Now, if you want to, you can also leave a message on the SpeakPipe button, which will be to the right-hand side facing the screen. You can leave a comment on anything you want, whether it's a piece of content or let me know how I'm doing. At this point of the show and this time of the year, I usually tell you that there's more than one show or there's one show left, which I'll publish on May 10th until I publish the next one in September. But this year, I think I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've been looking at some of the challenges of today's job search, and although the numbers are low, like 3.7, if I'm not mistaken, many of you are still out of work. I decided maybe that it might be good if I didn't ghost you this time for 3 months as I usually do. I usually take some kind of writing sabbatical, even though I'll be doing a lot of writing as I usually love to do. I also will drop an episode every now and then, maybe one or two a month during the summer months. Actually, I only drop one or two a month anyway, but it might be just one a month. I might get inspired, drop a couple, but I'm going to keep it going. And there's not going to really be in a hiatus according to the way that I record and drop episodes. So let me know what you think. Would that help you if I published more content during the summer as far as what you hear on a podcast? Of course, you can always go to my YouTube channel, the live streams. I'm always doing something and do a lot of writing, and I talk about what I write very often because I'm asked to. So feel free to let me know what you think, and let me know what you need to hear and what you want to hear more of. For today's episode, I decided that I'll interview, or actually I'll publish some conversations that I had with some of my career thought leader colleagues. I went to Philadelphia last week, and while I was there in the conference learning some stuff, I was also able to grab some conversations. The conversations I had with career pros Chris McGuigan, Ken Diamond, Michelle McCann Kelly, and Caroline Francis. All these are career professionals in different areas, helping job seekers in any way that they possibly can. So I'll link to their sites or their LinkedIn profiles in the show notes. The featured episode, the featured interview today is going to be with Carla Bass, who's a retired Air Force colonel and author of the book Writing to Influence. She covers ways you can advance your career through writing in her book, and I think it's very valuable, and it covers many spectrums, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're a careerist looking to advance your career, or if you're on the job search currently, how you can write better. In fact, she includes a section on resume writing, and I think it's very revealing, and I think she shows what a lot of the resume pros that you've heard on this podcast and had talked about, and the different ways that you can show an employer value. As I stated earlier, I will periodically release shows throughout the summer, a minimum of 3 and maybe more than that. You'll get hour-long episodes of job search advice, conversations, tips, and special guests with advice. Of course, many of them have been long-time established experts, and so I hope that's going to be something really special for you and something that you can use in your job search. I plan to include full excerpts from my live stream shows, The Modern Job Search Checklist or Job Seeker Nation. I'll include some of my guest appearances on other shows too. So enjoy the rest of the show, and I'll talk to you soon. I hope you enjoy what's coming. Peace and the value of love. I'll see you next time on the next episodes.
Well, after I had my fried shrimp for lunch, I had to go somewhere else where everybody else was. Back with another guest, and I want to bring to you Caroline Francis. She works for the University of Kentucky and advises job seekers in alumni career services, although maybe not so much of an a la carte like for undergrads, but nevertheless, she's in the area. But particularly, she helps people in their job clubs. It's like 2 of them that you're involved in, right?
Twice a month, correct?
Twice a month. That's work. That
It is a
is
labor of
work.
love, but we see
How it
so
is.
many great results.
Yeah, it is. It is worth it. And people who follow me know, people who follow me really closely know how I do it during the summers, and really we've gotten some great results. In fact, I think a couple of people wrote something on my LinkedIn from last year about how it's helped them. But all in all, I want to get your perspective on job clubs, on why has it been such a great not only inspiration but a tool for job seekers that and people to get that come.
Job clubs are not new. I've known about them for 30 years.
Right.
But after the last recession, 2009, 2011,
Mhm.
when so many clients were desperate to find jobs,
Mhm.
they had never had to look for work. They didn't have an updated resume,
Mhm.
and they needed a lot of help. And their networks had dried up.
Mhm.
Their technology skills were weak. So that's when we started the Central Kentucky Job Club in Lexington, Kentucky. It's free and open to the public. And we have helped hundreds of people through the years with all facets of job search. I always encourage clients around the country to try to find a job club in your community. They are the most perfect thing you can do to supplement your job search,
Yes.
build your network, meet employers, and just become a better job seeker, because we're all going to have lots of jobs and careers, as you know.
Yeah, it's another way to get coaching and for people to get feedback, because the feedback is so essential now, because sometimes you think you're doing the right thing, but the optics don't look exactly the way you perceive it at all, does it?
No. And just updated resume techniques and
Mhm.
interviewing strategies that if you haven't been in the market for a while, things change.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
especially saw a lot of older job seekers, mid and late career job seekers.
Mhm.
From when we started Job Club, that was our primary audience.
Mhm.
So they really had a lot of catching up to do. And we've been meeting now for 9 years.
Yeah.
We went virtual like a lot of job clubs did during COVID,
Right.
and continue to meet virtually, but we are also back in person.
Ah, okay. That's the same thing as my friend and mentor, Damian Burkle. He has professionals in transition, and he's been running it for many years now. And they've helped like more than 10,000 job seekers throughout the years. But that's one of the things that he's doing too. They're meeting virtually, but they're also meeting in person. And people, I guess it depends what area of the country you're from. People are going to either come or they're going to continue to meet virtual. But I think that's the kind of shift that job seekers need to make ultimately, is that they need to understand the workplace, where they're going to work, what they're going to ask. And I think older job seekers often take for granted that it's not the same work that they come up with. We just don't go back to the same thing. We didn't in the Great Recession, and we're definitely not now.
Definitely not.
So
Great.
talk about how much do you talk about like video interviewing and just some of the how things have changed over the past couple of years.
Sure. Formats can be different for Job Club. How we typically run is we begin with networking
Mhm.
when we're in person. We have short networking exercises for people that are in person to meet. They're forced to meet people, which
Right.
is people are nervous about that at first, but they'll email back and say, that was the most impactful thing I've done in my job search. It forced me to practice my 30-second commercial and meet people every time I came to Job Club.
Right.
Then we have a guest speaker, and we have 3 schedules a year. We kind of run on a schedule of a university. We have a winter, a summer, and a fall,
Gotcha.
where in each cycle we have one speaker that'll really focus on interviewing,
Mhm.
a speaker on LinkedIn, a speaker on resumes, usually one on job search strategies, and then we throw in some other topics such as working with recruiters or how to get the second interview, overcoming job search barriers,
Right.
ageism. So a wide variety of topics that we'll cycle in. At the end, we always give an opportunity for employers to share their job leads.
Right.
and meet if they're in person. Meet with
That's
people.
cool that you have employers that actually come.
We
Very
have,
nice.
yes.
Very nice. Now, what would you say would be one or two things that how your advice has changed in the past couple of years since COVID began? What did you say before, and maybe that might be a kind of shift that in the way that you give advice now?
I think on resumes, people really need to focus a bullet on their resume. If they have had remote work experience or experience supervising remotely, they really need to play that up on their resume now. Also, as we're talking about in the conference, job seekers and professionals need to be more strategic on telling more about their accomplishments and how it resulted more strategically, perhaps the company or the organization,
Right.
the greater impact of what they did, and being able to clearly and confidently share that will certainly get them further in their job search.
Yeah, I really think that as career consultants, advisors, whatever the category is that if you're not shifting along to care client, you're kind of doing a disservice to them. Or even if it's free, if you're offering free help, it's at a cost in a sense, because you're setting people back by not informing them what it looks like in the interview landscape, what it looks like in getting the advice. Because advice, I find it even changes from every few months or so, because the market takes this dip and then it rises, and then the job numbers go up and down. And although they may not have a direct effect, they sometimes have a way to say, okay, something is not working, and you should know what that not working is.
Well, networking has always been so important, and people don't realize how important networking is.
Right.
And now more than ever, with not as many public events as there were before COVID, people really have to reach out. And they have to be more intentional about reaching out to schedule a Zoom session, a phone call, a coffee meeting, to nurture, develop, and maintain their contacts, their network. Always be connecting. I tell my clients, ABC, always be connecting.
Yeah, it is something that it's easy to do because we come in contact with people every day, unless you know you're a hermit and you're in the mountains somewhere where no people are. Other than that, you come contact, and it is a part of your lifestyle. As I talk about, job search is a lifestyle. It's something you do while you go and do about your day, while you're waiting in line, while you do your laundry, while you're barbershop or the hair shop, whatever it is, it's there for you to do. So if people want to get a hold of you, want to know more about you, what can they do?
They can contact the UK Alumni Association. Our services are open to the public. Anyone can join the Alumni Association, even if they've never been to the University of Kentucky, and take advantage of alumni career services. Our website is ukalumni.net/career. And we do have certified career counselors on staff to help people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me, and I'll continue to provide this content throughout the rest of the afternoon, for at least for the next few hours. So stay tuned, and we got some more coming up. Peace and love. I'll see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Not a problem. Okay, so I am back with you. I hope you enjoyed Chris and me talking with her. Now I have with me here Ken Diamond, who is a recruiter and a great one, if I may add, just by his presentation just a few minutes ago. Here, his new presentation software for jobs. Is that right?
You did. It actually incorporates career portfolios and some other great tools that help a job candidate really differentiate and stand out when you're competing for a position.
Now, when you're talking about how to stand out, this is something that is not mainstream, particularly because people are very slow to adapt, I imagine, right?
Good point. Yeah, that's true. So we just re-engineered tools that we had up in the past and completely re-engineered, including video, career portfolios, teleprompters for practice. And the biggest differentiator platform are the deliverables that a candidate can develop and use in the process. They have marketing materials, URLs for their career portfolios, video links for their success stories and their branding pitches, and PDF files, so they can make an interview presentation to compete for a position, to prepare. And that's a PDF, basically a slide deck that answers the question, why should they be hired? So we have a step-by-step process that walks them through that, developing we call it a presentation. It's not actually a presentation. It's really more of a discussion guide in the interview. But by going through this process, the candidate is much more well prepared and confident, and they stand out because they're doing something different than the next person.
Sure. And that's what it's all about, right? It's about being able to, because people forget they compete for jobs. You don't just get a job just by auditioning and maybe having a dancer part. You want the main part.
That's
the
correct.
one that's being on.
One person gets selected.
That's correct. So tell us a little bit about how employers respond to video. That might be very interesting to a lot of job seekers out there who might be saying, oh, video, you can take it or leave it. But these days, it is kind of becoming the norm.
Yeah, so there's a good example of that. One of my recruited clients who I was doing a search for, it was for a manufacturing training manager. And I told my candidate, Julie, I showed her the tools and how this company really likes to hear the stories in there's different acronyms for it, but it's essentially the situation, challenge, action, result. So the candidate really locked into the idea, and she went on to our site and went through the step-by-step process to create 6 related stories of her successes as it related to what the company was looking for. So the system allows you to upload into a career portfolio, which is essentially a web design, and then you can provide a link to the hiring company. So she recorded a kind of a thank you letter video right after her key and sent the link to the hiring team, which included her video-based success stories, her thank you video, her resume, her LinkedIn profile, so everything that they wanted to see. And everyone sort of won there. She got the job. My client got a great candidate for the position. So the hiring company received it extremely well in that case.
Yeah, and not to say that every single company is trying to be like that, but people have to really think about what companies they want to work for and be very strategic in how they're going to be able to get their attention. If they know that this is a highly coveted position, then of course they want to be different than everybody else that's applying. And then as an employer, of course, they're going to look at it and say, I really get to know and have that connection with someone. So seeing the video and hearing them talk and hearing the way they communicate and being that they're a capable communicator actually puts them at the top of mind, not just the top of the pile.
Yeah, it really makes it. What I look for in recruiting is motivation. How does this person really want this position? So they can do it, but do they really want it, and why? And when someone puts this together, these communication tools, the way that they can showcase their skills is just a huge differentiator. And I think it seems like we might be a little bit early with our, there's definitely a paradigm shift. People have to learn that video is huge and it's very impactful. And our tools really apply, as you see on the you can create your content, you can practice it. There's different deliverables I mentioned.
Yeah, we're just giving you guys a little taste, a small taste. So you can see that's the URL tools dot go to wintheview.com.
Yep.
And then you can navigate from there. And of course, we want to be sure that you guys understand that video is a very serious business. It's not something that you're going to just do passive or just do because nobody else is doing it, although that's a good start, but you want to also make it quality, because if you don't stand out and if you can't articulate your value, then you just becomes noise in a jack in a box. So
Yeah, just want
that's
to mention
really-
one thing is that
Sure.
the way it's used is you can generate the links, right? So let's say on your LinkedIn profile, you could record your positioning statement
Mhm.
and extract that video link from our software and just pop that in your file.
Perfect.
You can also, in your resume, obviously put your career stories individually and put the link to the video right next to where you note your accomplishments in your resume.
So if they press on the video doesn't play within, it goes to the site to play.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we host
Okay.
it. So what's nice is we handle all the website development, all that management, document management, video. You know, we take care of all that stuff. So in the past, we've had people have really good experiences. And then they come back in 2 years when they have their next opportunity, and all of their information. We retain everything. They can use it as long as they're in subscription.
Excellent. Thank you very much again for providing that value for folks. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the comment section. In the meantime, peace and valid love. Look for some other live streams I'll have throughout the day.
Thank you. Cool.
Hey there, I'm back. As I told you, I'm going to be having a bunch of people come through my feed today. And so hopefully you'll be able to get something out of the content I'm producing for you. In the meantime, I have here Michelle McCann Kelly. And how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. And where are you from?
I'm from the great state of Delaware, the one with the itty bitty 3 little counties. Born
Gotcha.
and bred there. Was not my intention to be here forever. I did escape twice,
Okay.
and fortunately, loving family is what pulled me back.
Okay. Cool. So, is there something that that you've been discovering through your clients that maybe Job Seeker Nation at large, or people who are at least considering and thinking about leaving their current jobs, that maybe you with your clients that people should be doing in their job search right now?
You know, that's an excellent question, Mark. And yeah, you probably are familiar with the expression, the great resignation.
Mhm.
That is true. And the reason why there's such a movement at this point in time is the level of fear has been reduced from the job seeker's point of view.
Mhm.
They feel confident that there really is another out there for them. So it's giving them the ability to take that leap unknown. Sometimes they don't want to walk into the unknown, someone or some company by their side.
Mhm.
In this case, they're throwing all that away for a bunch of good reasons. One of the tops is the ability to work remotely.
Mhm.
With the whole COVID pandemic, the way that we worked caused an immediate paradigm shift. So an employer's ultimatum of having to return to the office to work or you lose your job is no longer a scary tactic where people will be essentially bullied into staying.
Mhm.
So they're able to take this leap of courage because they realize, first of all, they are able to be as productive and in more than 50% of the cases, more productive working from home.
Mhm.
They've got the ability in their schedule to allow them to get a lot more accomplished. They're understanding they now have value that they can take to the competitor.
Mhm.
So with this great resignation, understand as a job seeker, you have a great deal of leverage when you're talking to your current employer. If they're insisting that you return, there are subtle ways to let them know that the knowledge that you bring to their organization is valuable and that the contributions you make are, while they might not feel them, they're going to recognize them when you're gone.
Mhm.
There are subtle ways to do that. If you need to get coaching on how to deliver that message, certainly contact a career coach or an interview course. Or I recommend a resume writer. Most resume writers are also career coaches. In essence, they need to be if they're going to be moving you through this process. Probably one of the most valuable people on your transition team. So with this whole great resignation, think about your transition team. Put one together.
Yeah.
One of the most important people on that transition team will be your marketing expert. In this case, and might I say, your certified professional resume writer. If
Okay.
these people have been vetted by their industry, then you know they're worth your investment. So let's talk about investment for just a
Well,
minute.
actually, I got a question for you.
Sure.
And perspective
Sure.
for you in the that you've seen, do you feel a little bit more courage and emboldened, or are they coming to you a little bit more scared because they might be missing out on something?
Both. And in terms of missing out on something, there's the acronym FOMO,
Yeah.
fear of missing out,
Yeah.
FOMO.
Mhm.
So a lot of them are realizing that if they don't make the move now,
Mhm.
when it's easier and more accepted to do that, that they will miss out.
Yeah.
Also consider the longevity that you've and your tenure at various positions throughout your career.
Mhm.
It used to be in the baby boomer days, they called it the cradle to grave employer.
Mhm.
Ideally, you really wanted one employer from your first job all the way through until you progressed and then ultimately got the gold watch and retired.
Yeah.
The thinking now is you'll probably be in an employment engagement, that's the whole idea, for about 2 to 5 years.
Mhm.
If you're there longer, now it's a red flag. Well, why didn't someone try to lure you away? How come they didn't want you? How come a competitor didn't reach out? So it is a paradigm shift with these employers to realize if you've been somewhere for way too long,
Mhm.
you're probably not valued in the market. That, of course, that's conception. So it's a matter of putting your best foot forward in the resume to convey your value to what this organization wants to see.
Yeah. And probably if you're not on LinkedIn, or you're not, then you think you might be on LinkedIn, you might be a voyeur on LinkedIn, but if you're not engaged in LinkedIn, really don't exist. And that's the thing that I think, resume, when I was a resume writer once upon a time, long ago, far away, you were a default career coach because it was during the Great Recession. So people were looking for advice anywhere, any kind of leverage you can get. Here we are again in a crisis, in a place where the world is on hold, so to speak. In some ways, but in some ways, there are some people who are moving forward with these current trends. So I know that for you, you're seeing a lot of clients coming and asking about how can they stay. So to wrap up, to help a client that you help clients do to stand out in this job market in any kind of way.
To determine what value they're going to be bringing to their next employer,
Mm.
whether it is in any industry sector or segment.
Mhm.
If you want to work for that company, understand why they need you and articulate that value. So out the window goes the one size fits all resume or one size fits all video.
Mhm.
You may have several out there. And think like that hiring person about what you want to give.
Yeah.
It's all about what they want to receive from you.
Right. You don't want to try to sell meat to a vegetarian to vegetarian market.
Funny
for
you
sure.
should-
True. It is true. And I think that's what people try to do. They think they can will their way or talk their way into a career. And it doesn't work like that. You better be in the same ballpark before you consider, what who you're marketing to, because everybody's a leader now, not just somebody that's a spectator spectating the sport.
Mark, you're right. And to get yourself in that ballpark, you better grab the right bat.
Yes.
2 of the right bats at this point definitely is your LinkedIn profile and, of course, your resume. Even if someone finds you on LinkedIn, they're going to want to see your resume. The resume is not out the door. It is still the critical piece. After all, not everyone's going to want to check out your LinkedIn profile when they put you forth within their own decision makers and their hiring search committees.
Mhm.
They want to see an actual document. So be prepared. Understand you're going to be playing in their ball field.
Yeah. And I love what you said too about having a team. That's really
Transition
important.
team.
It does take a village these days. You got to have proofreaders. You got to have editors. You got to have the writers. If you write yourself, and you've got to have some people who have the right industry perspective for you to latch on to and to reach out to give you advice. So thank you so much for being here today. And
You're
how
welcome.
can people find you?
They can find me through my website, www.careerprousa.net. And while I've been spending 32 years just writing resumes, I certainly have, but I weekend in there as well.
Mhm.
And on nights and mostly weekends, you're going to find me stepping on some stage somewhere across the United States playing global folk music. So my music website is shellykellyband.com.
Oh, how nice.
So for years, I've been Michelle McCann. And a few years ago, I met and married Jim Kelly. So my stage name is Shelly Kelly. Interestingly, Kelly is an EY, so Shelley is an EY, SHELLEY,
Mhm.
KELLEYBAND, ShellyKellyBand.com. And also, if you happen to be on the East Coast, to program every Wednesday morning on 91.3 FM, WVUD Newark and WVUD HD1. That's right, to the left of your radio dial and on every device you have at WVUD.org. Wednesday morning from 6 to 8:30 a.m. Shelley Kelly from WVUD, the station that loves you back.
Well, that is great. Got a little bonus there too.
Thank you.
A little folk music.
By the way, I was the 2019 Folk Musician of the Year for the state of Delaware. I just love to play music. It's my outlet. However, my gift is writing and my skill is marketing people. That's why you'd like to partner with me. Mark, thanks so much for the opportunity and the time.
Well, thank you all. I'll be back later for more guests. I promise they're just coming right on through. So peace and valley love. Until then, thanks. Thank you very much for joining me on the Voice of Job Seekers Live. And I try to do some of this stuff whenever I can, to do it live where everybody else is supposed to pass. We used to do the audio thing and just audio record. I guess everybody's kind of on the live video show. So you can go back and watch the replay, but eventually it will show up in the podcast directory as a show for that purpose. And I want to welcome you if you've just joined me for the first time. My name is Mark Anthony Dyson, and I am the voice of job seekers. You can always follow me on my stuff, including LinkedIn and Twitter, where you'll basically see the show and this show with Carla Bass. Carla Bass is Colonel Carla Bass, retired of the Air Force. And she's written a book called Right to Influence. And she goes around speaking. You may have even seen her or heard of her on other podcasts. And we're also going to be talking about how writing is useful careers, which is right up my alley, because you guys know that's what I mainly do. And I use that as my jump off point of talking about careers and all the things that I've talked about all the past years that I've done. Welcome to the show, Carla Bass. How are you?
I'm terrific. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to communicate with your audience.
Yes. And when you contacted me, it was like, I know her. I know her because I heard you on other podcasts. It was like 2 other podcasts before. And I said, she'd make a great guest one day. But, you get 1,000 people who want to jockey for position for your attention. And you came at the right time. So I thank you for contacting me.
Yay.
It's one of the few times where somebody actually contacts me and I see that they have value and I say yes right away. Everybody else, I kind of haze and give them a hard time to come on the show. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. But yes, Writing to Influence is your book. And you also have a course that's coming up in the spring, Catapult Your Career Right to Influence. But I do want to talk a little bit about why it is almost essential these days to write. And though I'll have a few of my colleagues who say, well, you can do video, you can do audio. Yeah, you could do all those things. But to me, nothing lasts the test of time like writing does. Would you agree with that, or would you vary from that?
No, I agree. It's all about communication, but there are so many things that you have to accomplish via writing that you cannot accomplish by podcast or video or other modes of communication. So writing is essential.
Yeah, yeah, and how you write is also essential. I mean, writing is one thing, but writing well is a whole nother thing. And I've done shows in the past where I've had and a shout out to Susan, the grammar goddess. I don't know if you know her, but she used to hang with me for a couple of episodes about writing and how important it is and how grammar is really important. But a lot of times grammar is seen as kind of the lower entry, and that's what scares people off because they think it has to be about perfection.
Well, actually, the way I teach my writing methodology, think in terms of an inverted triangle. Inverted. So the top part of that is where you have to actually strategize your message. So it's not just writing, it's not just grammar. You actually have to use some psychology to strategize the message. And I can share a couple quick strategies.
Sure.
Okay, so one strategy is know the audience, which is the cardinal rule of all communication. Do your homework. You have to know what is it that the audience needs from you. You have to know what is it that you're wanting to achieve from the audience. What language do they speak? And I mean technical jargon. Are you talking to technical specialists, or are you talking to laymen? You make sure that you've got the right dialect for the right people. So know the audience is one. Outline your message, because time and space is critical. So don't just start talking or don't just start writing. Use the available time and space to outline where it is you're trying to take the reader or the audience. Get those key points, recognize what needs to be emphasized, recognize where your argument is weak, where you need to go fortify it. I'm a huge believer in outlining. The next is write from the audience's perspective. This is a big mistake that people make, and I've got 3 examples. For resumes, people just instinctively write, how great am I? And they herald their own accomplishments. That's wrong. What you need to do is look for what is hurting the employer. What skills is the employer lacking? Write your resume from the employer's perspective. I can help you by A, B, C, D, instead of I can do all this great stuff. If I'm trying to sell a book, I don't say, buy my book, it won 8 national level awards. You're going to say, well, good for you. Instead, you say, if you buy this book, you will learn too, or you can improve your life by. So focus on the receiving end. If I'm submitting a request for a grant, I don't tout my grant program. What I do is I explain to the grant maker how my program is going to further the grant maker's goals. So those are 3 examples. When you write from the receiver's perspective. And 2 other strategies. One is don't bury the gold nugget. Whatever the heart is of what you're trying to convey, because time and space are so critical, put that up front. And then you follow that with the backup or the ancillary information. But if I only have 2 minutes with you, what are the most important things I want to convey? Boom, boom. And then everything else is prioritized after that. And then the final strategy, and this applies to everything, is add detail for context, because that provides the audience a mental yardstick on what you're trying to convey. So, for example, if you have a resume bullet that says, designed and developed an innovative marketing program, that sounds wonderful, but it's lacking the so what. The so what would be catapulted sales 30% last quarter and is used throughout the company. But the last strategy, I lied, there's one more, is talk about the what, not the how. So you flip that. Catapulted sales 30% over the last quarter by developing and implementing an innovative marketing strategy. So that last one is you emphasize the what and then the how. So those are just a couple of strategies. But it's all about determining what the message is and crafting that. And then you get down to that bottom part of the triangle, and that's where you actually hone the draft.
Yeah, and I think too, I think a lot of people get in what resonates very much with my audience is the fact that they have to be, what I often say is you have to show that you're the prescription to the employer's job description. You have to show what solution that you're providing them. Otherwise, they're not going to be interested. But I think that goes, that transfers and translates over to, in general, what's going to hold the audience attention.
Yep.
And that they're interested in what will you do for me, not what will sound good to make you sound good.
Yep.
And that's where people often bottom out, even in a simple LinkedIn post. If you're writing a simple LinkedIn post, a lot of people now, I guess, the thing to do is to tell their story. And a lot of people tell their stories very often. But I know I become disinterested if you tell the same story over and over and you don't have a point where to get to. And I think that's where a lot of people tend to become disinterested. It's great for somebody new to learn about you, but if you want to help people, you got to help them to where they are, not where you think they should be.
Yeah, and that's what I'm all about, is trying to explain not just the importance of writing. We can talk about that in a second, but offer them the tips, the strategies, and those word sculpting tools to tell them how to do it. And it's really, really easy. You know, people are sometimes intimidated by writing, but if you think about it, it's like a scavenger hunt. And I'll talk about the word sculpting in just a second. It's like a scavenger hunt. It's like poker or chess, like we just described about know the audience, know what the audience needs or wants. If you are countering somebody else's position and you want to get your position to be selected or your product to be selected, what are the weak points in the opponent's position? And respectfully but factually counter them. So writing a strategy to it. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it can be when. I was going to say it can be fun, but for a lot of people, it's labor. It's labor intensive, and I think a lot of times people will write and think that they only focus not so much the substance of the message, but for the fact that there is just a message. And really, it is about substance many times, because that's what often persuades the writer to act in one way or another.
Oh, completely. So here are a couple reasons why it's critical to write. Going back to your opening point about is writing more important or equally important to video and other means of communication. First of all, you have to be able to write to promote your business, to promote a product or service, or promote a cause, or even promote yourself. It's all marketing, and that's where all those strategies come into play. If you're wanting to win those contracts or grants, if you're trying to defend your budget, you have to be able to make that compelling case on why, go cut somebody else, but here's what I'm doing, here's the value I'm bringing, don't cut my budget, and make that compelling case. If you have a new program that you need additional resources to launch this, well, those resources are coming from somebody else, so you have to be able to make the case. What is it that you're doing? Why does this project deserve money at the expense of somebody else? Publicize good news, trumpet success. When you do bring something in early or under budget, if you are selected for an award, good news is golden nuggets to be able to then turn that around and include that in press releases, in LinkedIn posts, in marketing materials. Attracting and retaining talented employees is another essential means or need for writing. If you have to explain why it is that you need to come join my company, not the competitors. But you have to know what it is that those employees are seeking. Are they just looking for a salary? Do they want leadership responsibility? Do they want the opportunity to run a program on their own? So again, it comes back to writing from the recipient's perspective. But those are just a few examples on how writing is applied today and why you need to be able to craft that compelling message.
Yeah, in my own personal experience, and I'll tell you a quick story. I was on a national radio show last year, and the host obviously did their research. They found an article that I wrote from 10 years ago.
Wow.
10 years.
Yeah.
And just to think that we weren't doing a lot of video like we are now. We were doing some audio. We were doing a fair amount of video, but it was something in writing that found to someone else's eyes from 10 years ago, and it resonated with them. And I think that that's one of the advantages of having been online and have done a lot of work then, because then people will find they can look and compare and say, oh, this guy's really for real. Look what we wrote from years ago compared to now, and people can see how you evolve, and that resonates so deeply with people. I often still get I get surprised by why it does, because so you can see how you've evolved or why you've stayed the same.
Well, it's a portfolio that you're developing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think people if they think of their career kind of sort of in a portfolio manner, through writing, you can also show the different stages of how you got there, which in part of that resume story is that you're showing that you started here and that you've gotten here, and this is how you've developed through the way that you explained accomplishments, so that you can make it plain to the reader. So, this person's gone through this journey, and not only makes you credible, but it also makes you more palatable for somebody to look into, taking you further into their world and maybe their company, and perhaps up the ladder.
One of the, I'm going to read this. One of the biggest mistakes that people make with resumes, it's the verbs. So I apologize for reading this, but I extracted this series of verbs from one resume. So let me read these to you. You tell me, if you were the employer, what would you think about these verbs? Primary liaison for, responsible for, responsible for, responsible for, contributor in, contributor of, maintain, primary liaison, engaged with, responsible for, personally maintain.
That person's giving you a checklist.
Yeah.
They're not really telling about what they've done and how they've impacted their company or wherever they work.
Exactly. And the other thought is, just because you say you're responsible for does not mean you actually carried out that responsibility. And how did you do it? So I tell people to, flee from verbs like that, and instead talk about partnered with, developed, composed, implemented, deployed, hard-hitting action verbs, and then you follow that with what it is that you actually did, those details about which we spoke.
Yeah, it's making it more functional, in the sense of giving it a functionality that you actually have done something to achieve a result, as something that you've done something just to fill a line item. And what employers often look for is, okay, what will you do for me? And you need to be able to answer that question through what did you do for your last employer?
Yep. Another way to give your writing punch, to be able to get that compelling message, those are the word sculpting tools that I'm sure you're familiar with now. Mm-hmm. But when you get down to that pointy end of the triangle, that's where you go sentence by sentence, and you carve out the useless words, the redundancies, the words that hog space. And by the time you've divested it of all that fodder, now you've got that. One, you've got the hard-hitting message, and two, you've bought yourself more space to be able to make your case. So here's a couple examples of words that hog space. One is on a daily basis is daily. You never have to say on a blank basis. That's just ubiquitous bureaucratic blather. Everybody does that now, but it's not necessary. To the maximum extent possible is as much as possible. In an expeditious manner is expeditiously. So go through sentence by sentence and weed out all that gobbledygook.
Yeah, yeah. And even some of those words could be simplified when in doubt.
Exactly.
A lot of people will want to use a $10 word, but don't think about what each word actually means. Instead, understanding that to the reader has to be able to is going to just scan it at first. They're not going to necessarily read. They're people in the habit of let me see what I can get from it just by looking at it for a few seconds. Then if you intrigue them enough, they're going to read a little bit deeper. But if you're using words that they have to cut the weeds through, then it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to really understand what you're truly trying to say. So a comment, thank you, Sarah Rose Shrillo Elliott. She has a point that she she says she agrees with you about, writing from the receiver's perspective, understanding your audience. That definitely resonated with her. What kind of tools do you recommend somebody who's just kind of starting to understand how much writing really has, who understands the value of writing and they want to improve, they want to take the next step? Are there any other proofreading tricks or maybe another perspective you could provide that will help them take that next step?
Well, the first thing I say, and this is in my own vernacular, I do a gut dump. Everything that's in my head, after I follow the outline. Okay, you got to use that outline, but just put it on the paper. And so this is going to word sculpting tool number 10, which is revise, edit, and proofread, to answer your question. Each one of those steps is distinct. And I explain it. If you can imagine, for the revision part, you've just now done the gut dump and you haven't word sculpted yet. You've got the first draft. That's like a child's set of jumbled building blocks. You've got the ideas, but they're not necessarily in the order in which you need them. So when you're revising, you check to make sure that the ideas flow, that if you've got a topic sentence, that all the sentences in that paragraph relate to it. Sometimes you'll have to move around sentences or paragraphs. You'll have to cut ideas that might have crept into your draft that weren't in the outline, that are kind of tangents. So that's the revising. Editing is when you get to looking at sentence structure, and I'm sorry to say syntax, it's a little bit more technical. And then proofreading is where you go for the punctuation and the capitalization and so forth. Punctuation, I'm going to hit that hard just a little bit here. One of the most common errors in writing nowadays is commas. People don't understand commas. They approach them like you take a handful of salt and you just kind of sprinkle it over the whatever it is you're cooking. Well, commas are very easy, and semicolons, and they can mess up the meaning of what you're trying to convey. So proofing for punctuation is also very important. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
I think that answers a good part of it. But I think here she asks another question, or which could be tied to this. I think is do you change your writing style for shorter attention spans? That could be answered in several different ways, I imagine. But your take on that?
Well, the answer is yes. For shorter attention spans, you need shorter paragraphs. Longer paragraphs is like a horse pill that you're going to lose the reader with long paragraphs. So go for shorter, bite-sized paragraphs. If you're writing for under time constraints or with a limited space, then you cannot wax prolific on a particular point. I mean, there's writing that's fun to read. It's in depth. It's like a nice warm massage. You can expand on what you're trying to say. But if you're going in for a quick response, hard-hitting writing for a senior executive, for example, you don't have the luxury of going into great detail or using those long, flowery words. So there is a definite difference in what the product is and the audience to whom you're writing.
Right. She says thank you, and I appreciate that too. And I think that people will, I think people ultimately understand how writing, being able to write plainly, and what that actually is that ultimately you want to try to take the thinking out of people's heads and having to interpret your writing as opposed to making it plain and clear. And I think in answering that question, I thought about how everybody has kind of a short attention span these days. And it's almost, you have to almost assume that people don't have a lot of time to weed through the chaff and the weeds.
It's a golden rule. Write something that you would like to receive. Yeah, another issue here is email. In my book, I've got an entire chapter on email. My friends who are business owners said, "Oh, please tell folks how to write email because I, the business owner, have to rewrite all of my staff's emails." So if you structure it, if there's an action involved, you put the word action in the subject line, and then you triage it. What's the action? What's required? When is it due? And then comes the background information. But just cut and quick and precise, and the easier you make it for the reader, the more effective they're going to respond to you.
Yeah.
And the other thought, I know we're running out of time here, but the other thought about is, effective writing. When I went through all of those business-related reasons on why you need to write, all of that contributes to how effective are you in the office. And how effective are you in the office then feeds into input for your performance review. So if you are able to write the bid that wins that contract, if you are able to secure the grant, if you are able to bring in new business, all of those things are brass rings for you. And then you can turn those around and include those and input to your performance report, and that's what gets you promoted. So it all comes full cycle.
Very interesting and very engaging advice, and I really do thank you for spending time with us today. Your course coming up, you don't have any date specific yet for your course coming up, do you?
It will go on pre-sale in early February. I'll debut it in March. It's called Catapult Your Career, Right to Influence. And it's a 3-hour, about a 3-hour online course, but it's broken into modules, so you can work it as your time permits. And I take my strategies and word sculpting tools and I apply it to the resume, the cover letter, the strategizing the interview itself, the post-interview thank you note. Then once you nail the job, there's a section on here's how you do input to your performance reviews. In there's a section on here's how you write those effective email, and then I wrap it up with 15 proven tips on here's how you catapult, here's how you excel in your career based on my 45 years, working in the Air Force and in the federal government. So everything I know is in that course that's career related. And it's interactive. So there's scavenger hunts. I play verbal ping pong with you. It has a 30-page exercise book that has lots of challenges that are correlated to the 7 modules. So it's just like I'm talking to you now, back and forth.
Excellent, excellent. So people could follow you on LinkedIn and follow you on Twitter to find out when your release time actually is and when the exact time that it releases, and that they can follow you for more information to get your guides and to find out more about the course. And probably there'll be a bunch of people who are going to want to take that for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is on my homepage on rightttoinfluence.net, I have 3 free ebooks. One is called Right to Win a Standout Resume, Right to Win Input to a Performance Review, and Right to Win a Grant Submission. I developed those in the beginning of COVID because I thought that those were the 3 most significant pain points with which people were dealing. So that's there on my homepage.